Hello gentlemen and gentleladies, my name is Sir Stanger, and today we're going to be talking about the Pyro update that's upcoming, the new weapons that should be shipping out with it, and exactly how many weapons I feel like we actually need in the game, because there's got to be some sort of cap, right? And yes, in fact there has to be. There will be a certain limited number of weapons that are in the game when TF2 ceases to exist, so there will be a cap as to how many weapons there will be in the game, be it because we run out of ideas or because we decide enough is enough. Now first things first, let's talk about the Pyro update and why it is that it's taking so long, or at least why I think it's taking so long. Now without a doubt, the most difficult things for the TF2 team to make with the upcoming Pyro update are, we got two things. So we have the promised balance changes, and we have new weapons, which are supposed to come to the Pyro. Now, we expect balance changes in pretty much every major update these days, because there always needs to be some sort of rebalance. Something's always overpowered, and something's always underpowered, and it's probably always going to be that way. But the new weapons, well, that's a whole nother story. New weapons take a lot of time to make, everything from the concept itself being made, to the modeling of the new weapon, to trying to balance it to the current in-game meta. And with how small the TF2 team is, there isn't a lot of manpower to put in those hours to make a weapon like this very quickly. And I know what you're thinking, there are people who on the workshop already have their own different custom weapons and stuff like that for Pyro and other classes that you probably think would work just fine in the game. However, making a weapon that feels balanced for everyone, including the person using it and the person it's being used on, that's not so easy. Besides, have you seen some of the weapon concepts on the TF2 workshop? Some of them look like they could potentially work, but a whole bunch of them just look broken as hell. And while there's little to no way to know for sure, this is my estimate as the reason why the Pyro update is taking so long to make, because new weapons are just not as easy to make as you might think, and they do take a long time. And this is only for the Pyro. There are people calling for new weapons on basically every single class, and they want them every single update. And this is just a completely unreasonable expectation. There's no way you could possibly do that and keep these weapons fair and balanced for everybody. So I think that the time that it actually takes to make a weapon and put it into TF2 is going to be a big factor in determining how many weapons it is we actually need within the game, but it's not the only one. For all the people out there that are constantly calling for new weapons to be in updates, have you ever really thought about all the weapons that we already have in Team Fortress 2 that just totally suck ass and we can't actually do anything with? If you've ever played TF2 for any length of time, you can probably sit down and think of at least 5 or 6 weapons that you know of that are basically useless compared to all of the other ones you could be using instead. And for that reason, I'm gonna ask this question: why can't we just repurpose those? And I know that Take the Spy, for instance, doesn't really have any knives that are totally garbage and need to be repurposed, so maybe in those cases we could look at some new weapons, but for a whole bunch of them, we have some sort of garbage weapon that we could just replace the stats on and basically make a new weapon in the process. And while no, this isn't as exciting as getting a whole brand new weapon with a new model and everything like that, it saves a lot of time and man hours while still giving us the same effect as it would be if we were getting a brand new weapon anyway. So while people sit there and whine and moan that the Scout didn't get any new scatter guns lately, if you actually take a look, he has like 3 of them that are basically garbage and can't be used anyway, so why not just fix those? We've already seen this done with a few weapons in the past, and I think that that's the right direction to be moving in. I don't think we should be putting entirely new weapons in the game unless we already have fairly balanced weapons for that class in that slot anyway. Now, it's kind of hard to say what weapons we already have that are totally useless and for everyone to totally agree on them, but I think there's a couple of them we can probably come to a consensus on. Now this part is definitely my opinion, but in my opinion, I feel like that new weapons should give new possibilities to a class, and not just kind of expand on currently established things that they can already do. A new weapon should allow a class to tackle a situation from a different angle or a completely different way, so that way they can become more proficient at maybe a certain specific scenario, or maybe even a couple. In doing this, you generally make the class better at doing one thing and worse at doing another, but it all really depends on the weapon that you're going for and how you're trying to balance it. It's also relatively important to make sure that the powers that you give this weapon are relatively unique, at least to the class that you're giving it to, and in the game as a whole if you can, because giving the Pyro some sort of detonatable sticky launcher type weapon obviously wouldn't lend too well to its playstyle, since we already have the Demo Man for doing that exact same thing. New weapons should be exciting because they do entirely new things, and because they do them in a fun way. Not just any way at all. Like, we need to make sure that the way that these weapons are incorporating themselves into the game are in a way that's fun and generally balanced within the game. This isn't only extremely difficult to do, but it's extremely difficult to keep up, because with all the weapons we already have in the game, we're starting to run out of incorporatable ideas that we can actually put into the game and make the game remain balanced. And the game as it is already relatively unbalanced, so why would we want to go messing with the formula too much by adding in entirely new mechanics? It might sound like I'm totally against adding new weapons to Team Fortress 2, but I'm not. I'm simply trying to state the reasons why it is that it would be extremely difficult to do so as often as everybody wants, and why it's really something we can only do for so much longer. Each class only has so many weapons that you can give them until eventually they just start to feel ridiculous, or all the weapons start to feel extremely repetitive and similar to one another, because we've just either run out of ideas or we can't add any more ideas without making the game totally out of balance. Oh yeah, and speaking of keeping the balance, it doesn't take much. Only 1 or 2 stat changes can completely change how a weapon works and how it functions within the meta of the game. And it only takes 1 overpowered weapon to completely ruin everybody's fun.
施錠をしたとはいえ、こんな古い木の扉なんて簡単に破られるだろうな。
This shouldn't really be a surprise to anyone because we've seen this happen multiple times in tons of different games. 1 or 2 stat changes to a weapon or a character or a hero or whatever it is the game calls them, it can completely change the way that they're looked at in the game, and making them either extremely overpowered, extremely underpowered, or finally balanced within the game. And new weapons and heroes and stuff like that usually are the worst culprits, because they have yet to be tested in a large environment with a bunch of different players constantly playing the game for hours and hours and hours, figuring out why it is this weapon or character or whatever works or doesn't work. No matter how much internal playtesting Valve decides to do, usually new weapons that come out of TF2 are relatively underpowered. This has not been the case with all of them, but a lot of them I've seen have been really underpowered and underwhelming, because they really don't want to try and break the meta too much. And quite often, overpowered weapons are the result of those weapons trying to be buffed in the opposite direction so that way they can be somewhat usable, which usually they end up going a little bit off the deep end and making them way too useful, and they need to tune it down. And the argument that I hear most of the time for people wanting new weapons is that the game TF2 for them is getting really stale, and I don't think that new weapons are necessarily going to be the answer. The real entertaining part about TF2 isn't so much about the weapons themselves, and more about what we're using those weapons to accomplish. And while yes, new weapons can be a great way to help kind of mix up the game and make things new and refreshing, it really only does so much. In fact, these new weapons really don't mean anything at all if we're not doing something exciting with them. This is why I feel that probably the actual thing that we need within the game, rather than new weapons, is new maps. I feel like new maps, and maybe even new game modes, are really going to be the answer to long-term boredom with, TF2. With new objectives, new flank routes, and even new choke points to explore, this would really, kind of brighten up the game and give people something new to deal with, rather than just giving them new weapons. The more diverse the maps both look and feel will really kind of set the precedence as to how good these maps are going to be in the long term, and how entertaining they're going to be for people who've been playing the game for a while. Maps and game modes are no more easy to make than new weapons though, and they take quite a lot of time as well, so I understand why it is it takes so long for these to come out. But I do feel like in the long term, Valve should be more focused on trying to make new maps rather than new weapons for all the different classes. As cool as new weapons can be, I don't think they're going to be the answer to what it is that they're looking for. It's also why, for the most part, I'm pretty okay with just getting cosmetic updates every now and again, because I understand these are a lot easier to throw together, and they still come out with some pretty decent hats. I mean, this last hat update, the Rainy Day case, I feel like had some of the best hats I've seen come out for TF2 in a good long while. But now we've come to the part where I really want to get your guys' opinion. At what point do you think we'll have too many weapons for TF2? Until a certain balance within the game is reached, and every class can counter their counter, and every counter's counter can counter their counter, and every counter's counter can counter... Or maybe perhaps you just want to be fair and wait till all the classes have the same number of weapons. Or maybe you think we should just keep going until we run out of ideas. Or perhaps some fourth thing I didn't think about. Whatever it is, please be sure to let me know down in the comments section. I'm going to be reading all of them, and I pretty much always do anyway, but I'm going to be reading all of them a little bit more attentively this time. I want to see what you guys have to say about about this. If you guys have enough to say, I might revisit this topic and talk about it some more. See what you guys had to say, and maybe you guys change my mind. Who knows? Maybe I'll think we need tons of new weapons because the game is just totally broken as it is, and we just need, I don't know, every class needs 20 new weapons for some reason. But anyway, you guys, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Let me know what you guys thought of the video down in the comments section, and with that, let's keep the internet classy. I'll see you then. Hello, my name is Sir Stanger. Hello, my name is Sir Stanger. Hello, my name is Sir Stanger. Hello,
can I have the attention of the internet?
My name
for
is
1 second.
My name is Sir Stanger.